Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fan Interference with Wichita Wingnuts manager Pete Rose Jr. Fan Interference is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Wichita coach questions about the Wingnuts, baseball or sports in general, or just seek Pete's wisdom about life events that are going on out there. In this week's episode, Pete discusses some team updates with us. He tells us about his enthusiasm about playing in a new stadium. And what would Pete do to get beads on Fat Tuesday? Let's find out on Fan Interference. Well, let's welcome back manager Pete Rose Jr. Pete, a few things happening with the team, so let's get some team updates from you.
Well, let's see. We put Anthony Capra. Obviously, they released him from the roster. I think he's done playing. But it's a big loss. When you lose a guy like Cap, it's a huge loss. Just not what he does on the field, but off the field. But had some problems last year as far as control and everything, and who knows? Maybe he'll decide to, maybe strap it on maybe a little later and, have the urge to come out and compete again. And, we'll see what happens. But, we took him off the roster. We traded for pitcher Jordan Cooper. We traded for him from Kansas City for a player to be named later. He was in Kansas City last year. I know he's a Wichita guy. Wanted to come play for us. So, that's first and foremost. But just, love the things that he's going to bring to the table, and he's a great addition to our staff. And, obviously we signed, one of our better players in Cleve, and, we're super excited to have him back. He's a big part of us, not only on the field, but off the field. And, when you get a veteran presence like him and, you watch him play the game, you watch him do his work, you watch him, interact with the young guys. And, he's an asset that you just don't think that you can find anywhere else. And like I said, I'm just happy to have him on my side. I got to watch him play all last year, and you marvel on how a guy like him is not still in the big leagues. He had some leg problems last year, but can hit, can play the outfield, knows how to play the game, runs when he needs to. And he's not a vocal guy, but he's definitely one of our leaders to where he goes out and leads by example. And if he needs to get in somebody's rear, he'll be the first to do that. So I'm super excited to have Cleve back and the addition to Coop. And, I think, like we talked about, I think some more stuff will be, happening, starting to get moving forward here as far as signings and everything else. So we'll just, have to keep you posted on it.
Well, let's get into our fan questions this week. We first of all begin with John from Wichita. He says, was there a moment last season when you thought things really would come together for the team, or were really coming together for the team?
I think the game in Kansas, and don't get me wrong, I knew from the start that we were going to be good, and you just, and people look at me like, well, you started off so bad and da-da-da and da-da-da. Yeah, you're right, but, when you get to see these guys interact with each other, that something special is going to happen because, when you have these good teams, you look at the Cubs, you look how together they are off the field, and when you can see that at, involuntary workouts or, right there during spring training, you knew something was going to happen. But I would say the game in Kansas City, I think we scored 4 in the ninth with 2 outs, and we ended up winning that game in, I think, 16 innings. I think once that started, we kind of kicked it into gear, and it kind of just went from there. But, it's not hard to believe in my guys. It's not hard to know that something special is going to happen. And, you can kind of get the vibe once you get there and spring training starts and you kind of see guys starting to, interact with everybody. So, but I think that game in Kansas City really got us on a roll and got the engine started and the train moving.
I wonder from you, because you've been around baseball for so long, one thing that I find interesting in watching sports media like ESPN is when a team's losing 6 or 7 games in a row, they act like the sky is falling. And I'm thinking, this is 162, or in your guys' case, 100-game schedule. 6 games really isn't that many games if you get down to it.
It's not, but I've always said baseball's a marathon. It's not like football. If you lose the first 6, you might want to start looking at the guys who you're going to draft next year, because basically, that's pretty much, done. But like you just said, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And you really want to be hot as you're going towards, the end of the year. You go back and look at Major League Baseball with the wild card teams, why they're so successful in the playoffs, because they play meaningful games late into September, as opposed to people that have wrapped up the division early, whatever. Obviously the Cubs were different, it's stuff like that happens. But, you see it all the time, especially, well, they've lost 7 in a row. They lost, but, you get up to 15, 16, 17. Okay, yeah, you might want to start thinking about doing something else, or it's tough to kind of get out of hole of that. But, in our schedule, because we play our division so much, you start off slow. I think you're not dead in the water by any means. And especially with the wild card, who knows what can happen. But, I've been on a lot of really good teams that have really started off slow just to kind of find their way, and then it just kind of all happens. But I'm with you. I think it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Everybody wants to start off right. Everybody wants to, start off with a win and kind of start from there. But like I told you, I think it was last week, if we got to do the exact same thing to get in the exact same spot as we did last year, hey, we can go ahead and do it. I have no problem with it. But, I think we'll be all right with what we're going to have back and throw out there on opening night. And, once again, we'll see what happens.
Charlie from Wichita would like to know from you, what do you think about the Wingnuts getting a new stadium? I don't think you've talked about that yet.
I think it would be great. I mean, I think Lawrence Dumont is got a lot of character. I mean, obviously it's turf. The turf at Wichita State, I'll probably get yelled at, but turf at Wichita State is amazing. I mean, that ballpark is fantastic. But I think, you put a new stadium there and you get some shade for the fans. I know it's going to be tough to have, grass just because of, you're in Wichita and all the rain and everything else. But I think clubhouse needs it. I think the visiting clubhouse needs it. I think the fans need it as far as concessions and bathrooms and, stuff like that. But just more so from the shade. But I'll tell you, it's going to be great if it's in the same spot because you got a view of the city. But if we do get it, which hopefully we do, I haven't really read much about it, but if they do that, I couldn't be any happier. I mean, hey, Lawrence Dumont's a great place to play, and it's our home field. But I think you build a new stadium, I think you get people involved, and you start filling that up, and that's the thing. I think people in Wichita need to come out and watch these guys because. It's not your ordinary independent ball team. I mean, these guys can really play baseball, and it's just it's kind of disheartening when you go to St. Paul and you see 100,000 people. I'm just joking, but it feels like 100,000 people. But it's what a nice stadium will do, and I think the people of Wichita, they I didn't realize it was that big of a baseball town until I got there, and then you really understand. But I understand why some people don't come out to the game just because. If it's 100 degrees and there's no shade, why do I want to go out and sit and bake in the sun? You know what I'm saying? But I think it's needed, and hopefully they get it done, and we would, I would definitely, welcome the change with open arms. I think it'd be great for not only for us, but I think it'd be great for the city of Wichita.
Linda from Columbus asks, she says, the Yankees seem interested in making Alex Rodriguez their manager one day. Does that make sense after the way he treated his teammates during the whole steroid investigation?
I don't know. It's if you look at all the really, really good managers, I don't really think a lot of the really, really good managers were superstars. Just because I don't think that they understand how to deal with failure. I mean, A-Rod's a good guy. My dad loves him. They talk all the time. I think he would make a great manager. I think he'd be a better instructor than a manager just because you have a player go 0 for 20 or 0 for 25. I don't really think he understands, what happened or how do you get out of that because, he's never had to do that. My dad was a really good manager. He never really, so there are exceptions to the rule, but, I don't know. I think anything he does in baseball, he's going to be good at just because, he's done it for so long and he's so good. And I think he has a lot to offer, but, I guess, I don't know if he would be the right fit in New York, to be honest with you.
Ryan from Kansas City would like to know from you. He says, why is it that a player can perform so well one year and then really struggle the next?
That's a great question. I think sometimes, and more so a lot of times, if you have a good year one year and you come back the next year, well, you're trying to have a better year. Well, once you start trying to do something, then you're not going to have a better year. You do what got you the good year, which was be yourself. Now you're trying to hit more. You're trying to hit more homers. You're trying to do this more. Now you're changing everything from the year before. Pitchers, you're trying to throw harder. You're trying to get more strikeouts. You're trying to have a better year instead of, hey, you do what got you there, and you just concentrate more on being yourself. And I think if a lot of young players can just do that, they will end up having better years than a year before. So I think it's just a matter of people trying to do too much, or like you said, have a better year instead of just, hey, if I hit 330 and, hit 20 home runs and drove in 100 runs, I want to hit 330 the next year, drive in, hit 20 home runs and drive in 100 again. Now, I'm not going to try to hit 350 and do whatever. I'm just going to try to be myself or I'm going to be myself and do the same.
Interesting. Kyle from Cincinnati would like to know, do you have a favorite moment from your dad's playing career?
Sure. 41-92. I mean, that's obviously, I mean, that happens once in maybe 3 or 4 lifetimes. I mean, you can't, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, just to have that to happen in the place where we live, where we were born. Like he said, you've had iced tea with everybody in the stadium. You know everybody in the stadium by your first name on a first name basis. So definitely that. But people don't realize I got to go to the ballpark a lot. So I grew up in it, and there's a lot of memories. But I mean, 41-92. It's you can't describe it. You can't describe it. You can't describe the feeling. You had to have been there, and it's something that my grandkids will tell their grandkids, and on down the line.
Our next question comes from Cindy from Wichita. She says, she knows you talked about not feeling pressure to live up to your dad's name, but do your kids feel that pressure at all?
No, absolutely not. They love Papa for being Papa. They know what he's done and everything else, and it's really easy because all you have to do is, and I've had this conversation with my son, is there's only 2 guys that have 4,000 hits. That would be Papa and Ty Cobb. So why should you be the third? It would be great, but you know what? Why should you be the third? So as long as we're on time and we play the game that we're supposed to, how we're supposed to play it, he's going to be as happy as them as I will, as my dad was of me. It's tough to do, and that's coming from experience. To where I was that guy that didn't think I early in my career I couldn't strike out. I could not make an out. I couldn't make an error. I had to be in the big leagues right now, and it was him that had to finally sit me down and say, "Hey, just be on time and play hard, and that's all I really care about." And I'm proud of you. It's just as much as if you got 4,000 hits or whatever. But I've been compared to Derek Jeter. I've been compared to Stan Musial, and not me to them, but I've been compared to my dad, but all those other guys have been compared to my dad too. So, I think we've talked about that on occasion, to where if people want to compare me to my dad, I'll take the comparison just because, all the other names that have been compared to him. But they don't feel any pressure at all as long as they're on time, which they are, and they go out and they play hard, which they do. So I'm very proud of them.
Bill from Rockford asked of you, he says, I read that baseball wants to speed up the game because there is only like 3 minutes and 25 seconds of actual action in a game. Who's keeping tabs on dumb stuff like this?
Analytics, buddy. I really don't understand. I mean, if you want to speed the game up, just don't play innings. Just make it a clock. Just make it like football. Make it like basketball or whatever. But I just don't know what the hurry is. I don't understand why. Baseball's always been that way, as far as I can remember. It's always been. You sit down, you watch a game, and it may take, you get lucky and you get an hour and, 40-minute game or a 2-hour and 5-minute game. Hey, you're happy. But there's been games that have been longer. So I don't understand it. I mean, I don't know why they do it. I don't know if it's for commercials or whatever it is, but, it just doesn't make any sense. The game was good back when when Babe Ruth played, or in the 70s or in the 60s, even in the 80s. So, even in the 90s, I don't know why they're trying to change everything.
Wendy from El Dorado would like to know if you recommend against a head-first slide.
Oh, I recommend it 1,000%, just not in the home plate or first base. I did it all my life. I remember doing it, playing a wiffle ball game, and luckily we were in a hospital. I think my grandpa was in the hospital, and me and my sister were playing with my dad out in the waiting room, and I did a head first slide and busted my eye. I had to get stitches right there. So it was all I was brought up on, and I love it. I mean, there's different times when you do it. You know, if you're trying to break up a double play, well, you can't break up a double play anymore. So I guess it really doesn't matter. But I think it's you know, there's an art to do it. You land on your forearms, not really on your belly, but it looks like that. But I'm all for it, man. It's a signature in our family, and you know, I've always done it as a kid, so I would definitely recommend that.
Next up is Tricia from Butler. She says, Skipper, the Connecticut women's basketball team won their 100th game in a row. Give us women athletes some dap.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, you know, I sat here and watched that, and they've won 100 straight. I mean, you can't fathom that. I mean, could you imagine if the Chicago Cubs won 100 straight games? I mean, how do you have to give them more than any kind of credit you've given to anybody, because it's not like they're playing you know, lesser teams. I mean, the teams they were playing are, you know, they're really good, but it's, you know, a great coach. They always have great players. They always play as a team, but man, that's 100 straight games they've won. I mean, I don't think anybody else will ever do that. I mean, you sit there and you think about it. Okay, are they going to win their 100th game? No, 100th in a row. What? You just, you know, I think they've won 3 straight national championships. So it's like, wow, just, it's an amazing feat, and I would give more dap and more credit to than anybody else, because that's an accomplishment I don't think anybody will ever duplicate, not unless it's them, and they keep, you know, they may win another 100 and make it 200. But what unbelievable.
Next up is a person identifying himself as Old Coot. He says, isn't there just too much social media?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I don't know if it's just social media. I think it's all kind of electronics and data and all this other stuff. But yeah, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't really get on there much. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I just think there's too much wrong that could come out of it. You know, you get somebody pissed off after a game and goes to tweet something or do whatever, he's going to regret it. But you know, once it's out there, and you can't take it back. So, but yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm not a big social media guy, and you know, but I just think that's just the era we live in with iPhones, iPads, and all the other good jazz.
Our last question this week comes from London. She says, Fat Tuesday coming up, Pete. Is there anything you would do to get beads?
Oh, absolutely. I would lift my shirt up to get some of those beads. I heard those are lucky. I mean, I don't think you're going to like what you see, but yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, it's a great time, and I've never been to Mardi Gras, but you know, it looks fun, and you get down there, get some adult beverages, and get in the mix a little bit. Just hope that the police don't get you and take you away. But oh yeah, I'd be game for something like that. I think it's something that you need to do in a lifetime, and you know, if you can even get over to Brazil Brazil, and you know, go over and watch the real thing, I think that would be, you know, just as fun. But absolutely, I'd be all in for that. I think that would be a blast.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us this week, Pete. We want to thank manager Pete Rose Jr. for joining us on Fan Interference this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Wichita Wingnuts manager, please send them to us at askpete@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's askpete@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Sunday evening so we can give Pete a little time to review them before we record the show. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next time on Fan Interference.